Back in 2016, I did a video. It was kind of like part of that little like natural debate kind of like series I did. I tried to talk less about like who I think is taking stuff and more about who I think is not. And there was a couple individuals I referenced, and one of those was Merijn. So at least in my opinion, for Merijn to essentially cash in, and give up his natty card, it's kind of a big deal. Now, before we go any further, there are three very important clarifications I want to make. Number one is that when it comes to the use of testosterone or performance-enhancing drugs like steroids or any other drug for that matter, like recreational stuff as well, weed, cocaine, I don't really give a shit. When it comes to this stuff, I'm very libertarian. And by that, I mean that as long as, number one, you are an adult. I don't want to see like 13-year-olds running around popping, Diana ball and shit. And number two, as long as what you take or what you do doesn't affect anybody else, whether it be like physically, like if you were to take some of these crazy drugs like meth or PCP, which make you violent and you're gonna start like slashing out at other people on the street, and as long as it doesn't cost, like other people financially, I don't really give a shit. Number two is I don't want any of you guys to interpret anything I say in this video as hostility towards Merijn. I know him personally, he's an overall great guy, but at the same time, I respect him enough he's a big boy and he can handle somebody who may have a somewhat opposing viewpoint, in certain individual topics. And number three, I am not a doctor. My 2.9 college GPA made sure of that. So although I do think I know a lot more on this topic than the average gym goer, I am still nowhere near as knowledgeable and experienced as individuals who make a career out of this, such as, actual endocrinologists or a few other individuals right here on YouTube, some of which I'm going to throw up on screen right now. But that being said, I still do know a good amount of stuff, and probably more than 95% of you guys watching this. And for God's sakes, don't take anything I say in this video as sound professional medical advice, because doing that in scientific terminology would be dumb as fuck. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the good stuff. I have already watched the full video twice, and I've kind of like cut out certain parts which I think are the most important to talk about and the most relevant for you guys, so we're pretty much gonna like jump through a few of those parts.
Only recently, some of you guys have been commenting a bit here and there and noticing a change in my physique. A different change than it's been for the last couple years. And that is true, well noticed.
Okay, right off the bat, that is actually kind of interesting and it's a little bit telling. You guys may remember for my last few videos, one of the things I talked about in that series, when an individual manipulates his testosterone level within the natural range, if you're kind of dealing with these small fluctuations of going like 500 to 700 or 400 to like 550, you're probably not going to see that much of a significant difference. Usually when people see a tangible, noticeable, especially somewhat fast improvement in their physique, the fact that he himself mentioned here that he kind of has done that and other people are kind of commenting and noticing that, I mean, if you just look at his most recent, just the thumbnail alone in this video, I was like, damn! Either number one, for some reason he decided to Photoshop his head smaller, or just the rest of his body got bigger, and it's probably option two.
So the big question, what is going on, Merijn? Are you using steroids? Are you cycling? And the answer is no. I'm not cycling steroids. I'm not using SARMs. I am following a medical procedure. It's called TRT, under supervision of a doctor.
Now, this is one thing where I just have to state my opinion, and it's a little bit of a disagreement, but it's kind of just like, I guess you can call like the naming of it or the nomenclature. Like when people say like, oh, I'm not taking steroids, I'm just on TRT. It's kind of the same thing. It's like if one is eating 10 apples and one is eating 2 apples, and then you say like, oh, I'm not eating apples. It's like, no, you are. It's a lesser amount. Steroids essentially just indicates any synthetic derivative of hormones, or in this case, testosterone. You are still utilizing steroid, you're just doing so to much lesser amounts, and obviously in a much more legal, medically sound way under the supervision of a doctor, as opposed to some guys who just get like some random scary shit that some dude made in his toilet and then sells it to you on 4chan. Like if you were to look at, let's say, TRT versus like different escalating levels of like steroid experience. I'm gonna throw some numbers on screen right now, but for the record, they are completely made up. So let's say an individual on TRT, their dosing is going to be 10T. Then an individual who's not just taking, testosterone replacement therapy, they are taking a very like low baby, real steroid cycle for the purposes of bodybuilding or powerlifting, or maybe they're gonna be taking 15T. Same thing, just more of it. Although this case is still way less, because then let's say you get into someone who's like a steroid intermediate. At this point, maybe this person's gonna take 20T and they're gonna stack it with 5A. So then, let's say you get into the crazy shit. We're talking like Ronnie Coleman, Phil Heath, these mass monsters walking around like 280 pounds or something. Now it's gonna be like, okay, 50T, 20A, 5M, 10D, XYZ. This is the point where you get to crazy amounts and crazy quantities. TRT and steroids are technically the same thing, it's just typically a lot less.
And I literally feel better than I've ever felt, because the amount of testosterone I take is such a little amount, like it's not comparable to a steroid cycle. It's such a little amount that what it does is I was in a very low range, in a very low level, and right now I'm at the upper level of testosterone. This could still be a natural level of testosterone.
Okay, so this is also a little interesting because for the first part, yes, 100% he is right. What he is taking, if it's from a legit TRT clinic, is probably nowhere near the quantities taken by like legit bodybuilders, especially like legit bodybuilders you see on stage at like high level shows or IFBB pros. However, that being said, it does get a little complicated because, again, it depends a lot on where you get it, what's your source, what country you're in. Like, for example, a good source who actually talked about this and probably knows a little bit more than I do because he's actually doing it himself, Greg Doucette. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are big fans of him. He has talked about this and he's absolutely right.
In Canada, if you went in and you're on the lower end of the range, you know what they do? See you later!
For example, in my case, they would tell me to get the fuck out and come back in 15 or 20 years. However, if you're in a different country, such as in the States, where they have a much more private medical system, as opposed to here in Canada with our universal healthcare, there it becomes a little bit more, liberal, a little bit more subjective and easygoing, or aggressive with their medical procedure when it comes to TRT. A really good example of this is a YouTube channel called How to Beast. He is a channel who is actually on TRT. I'm gonna leave a link for his channel in the description box below. So he started TRT, I believe he was 29 years old, so still a relatively, young man, and he tested at
my total testosterone was 512,
which puts him pretty much straight right in the middle of the normal, healthy physiological range. Maybe like a tiny bit below what is average, especially considering he is, he's still in his 20s. However, he still was able to get, in contact with a TRT clinic, get on testosterone replacement therapy, and I believe a few months later, his testosterone shot up, not surprisingly. I think it was
so my total testosterone was 1227. This is a couple hundred points above the normal range,
which is obviously quite an increase. It pretty much more than doubled, and it is technically outside of that normal physiological range. Not by a crazy amount, but it's definitely, a considerably larger score or reading than he had originally naturally. But this is kind of where it gets a little controversial or wishy-washy, because technically the range goes all the way up to 1,000, and some clinics and some doctors, again, it's sort of subjective, can even push that further. So if an individual were to hypothetically supplement, with TRT up to 1,000, yes, you are still within the natural range, but it's kind of like, you get what I'm saying here? It's like we're really starting to get into a little bit of a gray area.
However, I am not going to claim that I'm natural anymore, because I'm not. Like some people, they use TRT, or some people, and then they say they're still natural because they have a natural amount of testosterone. But no, I do not agree with that.
Thank you. This is why Merijn's a good guy, because a lot of people, they don't do this, and I love hearing that from him because it's not an easy thing to say. Think of it this way. If comparing your regular old boring natural bodybuilder who takes nothing but creatine and protein powder, if comparing that to full-blown steroids is similar to comparing Ned Flanders to Superman, Merijn's TRT protocol, to me, it's kind of like Captain America. You're not exactly flying at the speed of light and shooting fucking lasers out your eyes. You are still a regular man who just beats up bad guys with his bare fists. You're just very good at it. So Merijn saying this does take a lot of balls, and I'm gonna give him credit for that because it's not an easy thing to say, to essentially personally, revoke your own natural card and doing so publicly, because unfortunately there are a lot of people out there who are gonna immediately discredit him altogether, discredit all of his future accomplishments, and they're gonna say like, oh, well, the only reason you look better is because, you're on TRT, it's the same thing as steroids and blah, 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 you're blah, blah, blah. Sure, it might allow you to surpass, your genetic limitation, but it's not going to do the work for you. I want people to understand that. A really good metaphor for this, randomly, comes from The Matrix 2. There was this one scene where, like, Morpheus talks to Neo, and he's just like,
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
This is kind of the same thing as steroids. It's almost like a key. They will open the door which is previously closed to you and set by your genetic limitation. This allows you to open that door. However, you are still the one who needs to walk through it with training, diet, consistency, keeping everything else in your life checked. It will open the door for you, but you're still the one who's gonna have to bust your ass to get through that door. And whether or not you wanna do that is up to your, personal decision. As long as you're honest about it, which Merijn is. And that, again, it's not an easy thing to do, and I respect him for doing so. Peachy, what are you doing? You wanna be part of the video? All right, Peachy, tell us about testosterone. Peachy, give me a kiss. Yes, there you go.
When you have low testosterone levels, literally doing TRT might help you, fix your depression and anxiety and all those symptoms, right? It literally could. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to give this advice, but this really can happen because it happened to me personally. A big part why I started TRT is for my mood, is for the sex drive, is to feel just better in general. Because guys, I was in a pretty bad place, and then I tested my testosterone levels. You guys saw that I went to Dubai as well to take some time off, everything. And that was all me in that bad state with very low testosterone levels.
Okay, so here it seems like he's describing how a lot of the symptoms that he was experiencing, which led him to the decision to use TRT, were not even primarily, physical or physique based. Which I have heard about. Now, I can't comment on this because, again, I'm not a medical doctor and I am not his medical doctor, but I will comment that I have heard about this. There was a really good video on this. It was a TED Talk by, I believe, a man named Andre Harris, where he talked about how low testosterone had a very big negative effect, not just on his physique, but actually on his marriage. It was a really interesting video which kind of talks about some of the lesser known side effects of low testosterone besides just like low energy, lack of muscle, higher body fat, all those things. A really interesting video. Again, I'll leave a link for that in the description box below.
Some of you might not realize what a work it takes to get as shredded as I do, all right? Because I have gotten so peeled in the last few years so many times, all right? And a couple times like really, really peeled, but I've always been I've been cutting so much. I've been shredding so much, which means eating less calories than I burn. I've been putting my body through hell, okay?
This is funny. This right here, so many people don't get this. This is real, 5-6% body fat. Everybody pay attention. You too, Kino Body. I'm sorry, but that's great and all, but it's not. This is real 6% body fat. That is 10% with relatively good lighting. Still very impressive, but not the same thing.
But I do think that shredding down all these times, taking my body to such a level that is really unhealthy, that is not good for me, may have impacted me like forever, my hormones. It may also have not. Like I don't know.
So what Merijn is describing here, again, in my non-professional opinion, I think this might be a big reason, if not the biggest reason, for Merijn's low testosterone situation. There have been studies which have documented the somewhat substantial decrease in testosterone that individuals, primarily bodybuilders, experience when they diet down. If you actually dive into the study in particular, it really shows just how bad this could be. In this case, they were following a relatively, healthy, normal, mid-20s male bodybuilder at 6 and 3 months out, and then 3 and 6 months after his actual show. And at least in this one example individual, he pretty much took his testosterone levels from 922, which is very normal and actually kind of above average and towards that higher end of the spectrum. And just through dieting down, after 3 months of competition prep, he literally took himself all the way to the bottom and technically below the normal testosterone physiological range altogether. He literally starved himself into clinically low test levels. Now, that being said, when they measured his levels again at 3 and 6 months after the competition, after finishing his diet, his testosterone levels are pretty much back up to normal and technically a little bit above where they used to be. It simply took a good amount of time, in this case, somewhere probably around, 2 to 4 months of eating like a regular human being and not frantically trying to starve yourself to 9% body fat. Guys, this is one of the big shitty things about social media, which I'll kind of give you an inkling from the perspective of me, a creator or an influencer. This is kind of the shitty thing when it comes to fitness, because it's kind of like you have these two different pathways, which invariably for many people lead to the same result. It's either, okay, you're not big enough, so what do you got to do? If you've maxed out your genetic potential, you got to take T, you got to take steroids, you got to do something to get that extra edge. Or on the other side, it's like, hey, maybe you're a decent size. I don't really feel like I need to get bigger in order to impress people and get the likes and the comments and all that good, get that social media positive feedback and right into my veins. If you want that, let's be honest, a somewhat more impressive physique is definitely going to help you. And if you're big enough, that's great. But if you're not lean enough, you need to diet down. And so you're in this constant cycle of feeling that you need to diet down to be lean for the gram and for YouTube. And you do that, but in doing so, you kind of feel like shit and you decrease your testosterone. And then because of that, you feel like crap and then you end up having to supplement with testosterone. So it's kind of like all roads lead to here because you never feel big enough or you never feel lean enough. This, I will be honest, is one of the crappy things about social media. But at the same time, again, I don't really know the nitty-gritty details of Merijn's situation. I am not his medical doctor, and maybe he did try this. Maybe he did try to, eat a good amount of food for 4 or 5, 6 months and didn't see those levels come back up. Or maybe they did, but nowhere near what they used to be earlier in his life. Again, I don't know the specifics. I don't know the actual levels, numbers, dosages. And at the end of the day, look, if you really are feeling like nobody wants to take this stuff. Nobody wants to inject themselves with some shit every week for the rest of your life. Potentially or probably. It's not a fun thing to do for at least me personally and probably many people out there. So if you're at that level, it's probably gotten bad enough in terms of these, other symptoms, psychologically, mood, sexually, whatever, to the point where it was necessary. And at that point, if it's really that bad, then fuck it, yeah.
It's also a lifelong commitment, which is why it's a very big commitment, guys. I've been thinking about this for the past about 2 years. It's not a small thing. It's something very big. It's a big decision that will impact you for the rest of your life. And this is why it was a very big choice for me.
This is a big deal because it is quite possible for a lot of people out there who go on TRT for an extended period of time or steroids that eventually when you want to get off of it, you can't. A big reason for this is because in essence, it's almost as if your balls have been permanently inactivated. The Leydig cells in your testicles, that they are no longer able to, once you go cold turkey, they are no longer able to operate at the same functionality or efficiency or whatever that they did when you were natural in order to produce sufficient testosterone on your own. This is a big reason why there is a increased likelihood of having issues with fertility down the road after using testosterone. To what extent, it's hard to say. It's like a spectrum of how bad it could be, how long you do it, how much you do it, all these things. But this is a big reason why, for me personally, at least at this point in time, I still don't have kids, but I probably would like to in the next, at this point, pretty much as early as next half decade. Kind of weird to say that, but potentially, yeah. If there's something which could even have somewhat of a likelihood of inhibiting that, for me, it's too much of a price to pay.
When I set a goal, guys, I go next level. I give my all to do it. And I'm really proud of those things that I've accomplished. But no one cannot say that I have not paid my dues. I have reached my natural limit, you know, if not truly reached it, like very close to it, because the last 3 years, even like, you know, the last couple of years, I've just been looking the same again and again. And yes, I could bulk up, I could gain strength, I could, you know, build a little bit more muscle, but it wouldn't really be visually noticeable. And at some stage, I wouldn't really progress in the gym anymore either.
It's kind of depressing, but he is 100% right. And I could personally attest to this. Hell, I've been working out for 15 years, so I even have a few years on him. And I'm going to say something which is kind of not what you really want to hear on, you know, YouTube, where it's all like, yeah, what's up, guys? I'm going to crush some new goals. I mean, hell, I even have a whole series called The Ascension. Ascending, getting better, rising to new levels. But let's cut the shit. For a long time now, I compete and I look good. And I'll be honest, I am very happy many of the years the way I have looked in terms of my size, conditioning. I've competed in powerlifting and I got some numbers which are not nearly impressive compared to some of the freaks here on YouTube, but I was happy with it. Have you seen really, like honestly, big physical changes in amounts of muscle mass on my physique year to year? This is one of the problems when it comes to reaching kind of a genetic limitation. I've talked about 100 times about the law of diminishing returns, and this kind of plays into that. So if that's after 5 or 6 years, you can pretty much tap out what your body's capable of muscle naturally. What's gonna happen after, in my case, 15 years? And this does kind of suck. I mean, do you guys remember watching like Dragon Ball Z, for example? Let's be honest. One of the things that I know everybody, myself included, really loved is that every new Dragon Ball Z like saga, the Saiyan saga, Frieza, Cell, Majin Buu, it was always about what are we gonna see next? What new level is Goku gonna hit? Kaioken, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3, hell, even Super Saiyan 4, as fucking weird as it was and as much as Dragon Ball GT sucked, we all still really like seeing that new level. Now imagine if there was like a new saga, a new 100 episodes of Dragon Ball Z or whatever came out, and you were told beforehand that Goku will not experience 1% strength gain. No, he will not get stronger, he will not get faster, there's no Super Saiyan 5, this is it, he is done. Not that exciting anymore, is it? So at this point in time, I think we went through kind of like, in my opinion, what is the most important parts of Merijn's video. There are a few other things I kind of want to mention. Number one, this just goes to show how I think it is so stupid that testosterone is still like a class 4 controlled substance. I think it's a travesty, and I think that a lot of people are still going to end up doing it, but they're doing it in unsafe, unregulated ways. Like the fact that steroids, namely just testosterone, without a medical doctor's prescription, is like in the same category as you fucking doing heroin, something which is pretty much guaranteed to kill you in 5 years, is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Every time you open up a bottle of Advil, it tells you 600 other things that could happen if you take it, if you take too much, all these things. That's okay. Alcohol is okay. Cigarettes, weed, recently here in Canada. But testosterone, you trying to be a little bit more of a man's man, you can't do that unless you buy it from some sketchy guy at the back of your gym in an alley, or unless you're lucky enough to get a doctor's prescription. I think that is really stupid. Again, it really goes against my libertarian standpoint when it comes to this. To end things on a little bit of a positive note, this is my advice. For any of you guys out there watching this who may be experiencing something similar to Merijn or myself, where you have reached a point where you think you're almost kind of maxed out in terms of your body's ability to put on muscle, and you're kind of like, okay, what the fuck do I do now? Well, unfortunately, I don't really have a simple answer for you, besides kind of what I'm doing right now, which is trying something different. This is actually a big reason why I have just fucking fallen in love over the last year or so with rock climbing, because it's something new and it's something which isn't inherently completely limited by my DNA. Bodybuilding, as awesome as it is as a sport, is also shit because there isn't that much technique. Go in the gym, repeat the fundamental movements, bench, squat, deadlift, bicep curl, that's pretty much it. Eat your protein, get 8 hours of sleep, and repeat that for the next 10 years. But when it comes to more classic sports, when it comes to things that involve technique, like, let's be honest, steroids help all sports, but at the end of the day, no matter how much fucking Dianabol and testosterone you smash, it's not gonna help your jump shot. It's not gonna help the accuracy of your slap shot, and it's not gonna help me when it comes to rock climbing, especially a sport where I'm actually limited by my higher body weight. I found something I love besides just standard strength training, or in addition to standard strength training, and I love doing both because this allows me to still chase new goals, at least for the time being, until later in my life I do decide to join Merijn, join a lot of individuals, whether it be, taking it a bit further or scaling it back and just doing something a little bit more moderate like TRT. The point is, there's a good chance that someday I will join that, but not yet. So overall, I understand what Merijn is doing. As long as all of us are collectively working our asses off to become better versions of ourselves physically, that's all that matters. I'm happy for him, and yeah, cool stuff.